So what's going on, guys? I am Black Ops Amazing. Welcome back to another video. Welcome back to another Zombies Q&A, the series on the channel where I take your questions from the comment section below to do the zombie storyline, Easter eggs, and I answer them. As always, if you go into enjoy today's video, you know what to do by now. Drop a like rating. Make sure you are subscribed to stay up to date with the latest content on the channel. But let's get into this. Here we go, and enjoy. The first question of today says, hey BOA, if the real staffs from Origins were buried, where did they find the elemental rocks that make the fake ones? So in order to find out more information about this, there is a radio from Maxis in Origins where he explains how he, along with Richtofen, constructed the elemental staffs. We know the ones we use in Origins aren't the originals that we saw used by Primis during the Great War in the 1300s. In the Revelations ending cutscene, when we see Primis on the mound holding up the staffs, these are the original ones. But then we come to the early 1900s, where in Origins, the ones we use in this map, these are replicas. We don't know what happened to the originals. There is a 600-year gap between the Great War and Origins. We do know Primis, when they had the original staffs in the 1300s, they died during that time, and then were reborn again all these years later. So perhaps when Primis died, wherever they died, the original staffs were left with them. But yeah, the point is the ones we use in Origins are not original. So getting back to this radio, take a listen to what Maxis says.
The ancient texts describe an artifact known to them as the amplification rod. It is my firm belief this item is instrumental to harnessing the energy of the elemental stones. Unfortunately, neither the rod nor the stones have been recovered from any of our dig sites. I feel we must push forward regardless. As such, I have drawn up plans to create replica rods based on the descriptions from the main chamber. I will instruct Richtofen to begin fabrication immediately.
So he tells us that in ancient texts, there is an artifact known to them as the amplification rod. He believes that this item is instrumental to harnessing the energy of the elemental stones or the gems. However, unfortunately, neither the rod or the stones were ever recovered. And so Maxis drew up plans to replicate the original rods, and then he gave the instructions to Richtofen to begin building them. That tells us how Richtofen and Maxis made the rods, but it doesn't tell us how they got their hands on the gems. Did they make them, or did they find them? Some schematics for the staffs, some parts that are listed: the crystal housing, the sinking handle, listed the back of the staff as an unknown function. There's also a diagram with the elemental crystals. I'm pretty sure it has taken 1,000 shows. I've searched up anywhere. What it says. It says the ancient text, elemental crystals that power the staffs that I think are, and then the rest is cut off. I'm assuming he's saying they are missing, but getting back to your question, how did they find the elemental rocks to make the fake staffs? Well, we don't know. Did they find them, or did they make them? I'm not sure, and what happened to the original ones? Well, they were never found. We did get a glimpse of one of the original crystals in use in the Blood of the Dead cutscene. It is used by Great War Richtofen to rid the evil from Alcatraz. We also see Primis Richtofen pull it out of the lava in the Blood of the Dead cutscene, although I don't think this means anything. These cutscenes always show random things that have no relevance to the story. And if you're asking, well, how did Great War Richtofen get his hands on the fire crystal in Blood of the Dead? That was given to him by Pablo Marinus as a part of the Broken Cycle. You can hear that in one of the radios in Tagdo Toten.
I am not being sent just to witness what happened. But it is I who helps the Doctor break his cycle. Near the end of the Great War, when all hope is nearly lost, I protect him while he activates a device, a teleportation mechanism. I hold back the undead as he powers it up. I give him the moment he needs to escape his fate. I ask him, where would you go? He says, there is a prison I must travel to. Hopefully, I can intercept our friends before it is too late. Before he goes, I give him the elemental gem from the Staff of Fire. I had seen it used to vanquish great evil. He once used it to save my life. Perhaps it will serve him well on his new path. This is why I am here. It is no coincidence that I have also been left with the plans for the Agarthan device. That is how I get to the Great War.
So, yeah, there we go. Hopefully that answers your question. It does. At the same time, it doesn't, but it's the best answer I can give you simply because we don't know. But those are all of the facts. The next question from Daybot says, hey BOA, what happens when one player bleeds out / dies and the other players are still alive? So that's a good one. I've answered a few questions that are similar to this, like how do the characters heal themselves, what happens when you quit the game, why do the zombies die after you go down? But in this one you're asking me, well, what happens when you bleed out? If you're playing a game of zombies with more than one player, when one of you dies and doesn't get revived, that person disappears. You then have to spectate another player until you can spawn in the next round. But does this have any story significance? Where do our characters go to when they just disappear? Why don't they just come back straight away? Why do they have to wait until the next round to respawn? So let's take a look at this. You can see here I am on Kino. I was waiting for about 20 minutes for me to die because I was playing with random players. So I kept trying to down myself and they were reviving me every time. But eventually, playing as Dempsey, I got downed, bled out, and then you can see the character just disappears. What will then happen is you spectate another player and you respawn in the next round. Storyline wise, is there any meaning to this? What happens here? Where does Dempsey go when he disappears? Well, that's an interesting one because it's something that's never been explained to us. They must go somewhere? In Treyarch Zombies, everything means something. We've had the cycle explained to us many times. We know that our characters are trapped in this infinite loop, and so every time they die, the cycle resets, where they are brought back to life again. Dr. Monty resets the cycle. So when one of our characters dies in Zombies, it is technically Dr. Monty who brings them back. At least that's the explanation when you end a game of Zombies and you start again from round 1. But does that still stand when our characters spawn in a round later? Because technically if you think about it, surely that's not the cycle resetting. If we're spawning in a round later, resetting would mean we go back to the beginning, not forward. So you would think it is Dr. Monty that brings our characters back on the next round. Why not straight away? Well, gameplay wise, that would just make it too easy. And when they bleed out, where are they whilst they're waiting for the next round? Where do our characters go to? Argotha? Ether? Are they in purgatory? It's not something I've ever really thought about. But because in Zombies there is an explanation for everything or most things, I think there's an explanation to this that if Treyarch wanted to, they could explain. They haven't said anything about it. Maybe the reason why we don't respawn back in straight away is because it takes time for Dr. Monty to use his powers. There are a few ways you could look at this and a few answers that you could give. Of course, it's theory because we don't have an official one, so let me know your thoughts about this one in the comment section below. Anyway guys, there we go, that is it. That is all I have for you for today's video. As always, hopefully you have enjoyed. If you have, you know what to do. Drop a like rating, make sure you are subscribed, and I will see you in the next video. Leave your questions down below, and until then, goodbye.